What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bios3 Raw TV. Today we're going to talk a little bit about peaking. And I'm not talking about peaking for a contest. I'm talking about peaking in general when an athlete starts to hit their stride, which is happening with Dennis Wolf right now. So there comes a time, like in a bodybuilder's career, where they're going to nail their conditioning, their fullness, their size, everything comes together, and they nail it one time. That's it. If you have the best genetics in the world, you've got one perfect peak in your life ahead of you. Hopefully you haven't peaked already, and that's it. You'll never be able to replicate that again. And that's seen with every single Mr. Olympia that we've had, every single bodybuilder that has been in the spotlight, who's had a huge fan base that people pay attention to year after year as they're progressing. You progress to a certain point, and then your body starts to go backwards. It won't grow anymore. It doesn't look better. It looks worse. Now, some of these guys, like Lee Haney, retired when they were on top. Okay, so they were still progressing, and they weren't starting to go backwards. Like Dorian, 1993, nailed his conditioning, size, fullness. The next year, didn't look the same. Although good enough to win, not the same. Jay Cutler, 2001, undeniably, unquestionably, people say that is his best look. And he said that he was always chasing, that look again and could never attain it. Did he attain different looks? Yeah. Was it better? Not necessarily. So, throughout the years, you'll notice if you're a competitor and you start to improve, there may be years where you go backwards. And that happens. That absolutely happens. There was a year, 2007 for me was a really good year. 2006, I'd say, was a really good year. That was the Body Rock. And condition-wise, fullness, I lacked a little bit of fullness, but overall, I feel like I put together the best package that I had ever had at that point. Now, going into 2007, riding that wave out of 2006, I had the feeling like, okay, now I know where I need to improve, and I can. I need to improve fullness, and of course, I need to come in harder. That's just a fact. But it's like you have to balance fullness with hardness. That's the way the NPC is. Many of the natural bodybuilding federations, you don't have to have fullness or size. All you have to do is diet down and get as short as you possibly can and do whatever it takes to do that, and you're going to place well. In the light heavyweight division, which is I consider the hardest division out there, there's the most guys that fit into that class as a general population that have the bone structure of like a nice symmetrical bone structure. That's the hardest class, and that seems just to be the class where I fit in. I could make my way out of that class if I wanted to, but I usually like to sit in there and try to test my mettle in those classes. So the following year, what I did was I said, okay, I need to improve upon this, and I improved on the fullness, I improved on condition, and what happened was the last 24 hours I was following a guru's advice, and everything went down south. I mean, everything just fucking failed. It just fell apart. And I got on stage and I said, man, I look bigger than I did last year, but I am flat and look like shit. And I was pissed because, 2 days before I knew I was better than I was the year before. I was peaking. Well, decided to do my own contest prep, peaked again for 2 or 3 weeks later at the Lehigh Valley, and had that bigger, fuller, harder package. Like, I did it. I had peaked better. So now, the following year, I was trying to figure out, what do I have to do to peak again? Okay, same thing. Went through all my prep and stuff. Bottom line, came in flat. Didn't have enough time to diet. I got too fat in the off season. Didn't come down to where I needed to be. Didn't look as good. So now you had like a couple years that were like this. A show in Pittsburgh that was down. A show in Lehigh that was like this. Now you're going back down the following year, 2009. I worked with Kevin Lavroni. We put it all back together again. And came in as a heavyweight. Peaked again to the best I ever had. Boom, fine, great. Next show, like a couple months later, boom, peaked again. So it was like you could see steadily that the bad shows that I had wasn't because I had peaked and gone backwards. It was because I had screwed something up that last 24 hours that made my physique look worse. So you could see it up, down, up, down. So I knew, I said, what? I don't think that I've hit that peak yet. 2010 was right on schedule, right on dialed to be in the heavyweight class. And I think I was about... Honestly, if I hadn't pulled my water and stuff, I would probably be about 210 or 211, and I was hard. I was exactly where I needed to be. And last minute decided, you know what? Those are big guys that are in the heavyweight class. I want to go down to the light heavies, and started to stop eating carbs and suck my water out to try to make that light heavyweights. And I still was 206 when I got on the scale. Wasn't even close. Looked like shit for that one. And considering it didn't look that bad. But again, it wasn't because I had peaked and gone backwards, because I had done something stupid. And that was 2010. 2011... Now what happened was I decided I was going to get fat. for a while. Got fat, dieted down, looked good considering where I came from, but still not to where I was a couple of years before. So now it's like, well, had I peaked, had I not? 2012, the best package ever. So obviously not. 2013, the absolute best package ever. But now what I'm seeing is I had torn my pec, I had a back injury. I cannot train the way I need to progress. Do I feel like I can progress? No, I feel like 2013 was the peak of my physique, and it is starting to go backwards. You can see it in the way that my body starts to look tired. It's a strange look that after you've peaked. And now it was time to say, okay, stand back and say, can I improve? And that's where you have to sit back and decide whether you can be better or not. Some people just like to keep going whether they don't look good or not. They don't care. And Dennis Wolf right now, he's riding that wave of peaking. So he's peaking right now, and all these years we've seen him go up and down, up and down, up and down until he's hitting that peak. But how long will he be able to maintain that peak? And he's only going to hit it one time. This Arnold Classic, he looked phenomenal. He was better than he was at the Olympia. Can he be better at the Olympia this year? That's where we're going to find out whether or not Dennis Wolf has peaked. If he comes in bigger and drier and harder, then we're going to see, okay, you know, he hasn't peaked yet. He's still peaking. But you're going to notice there's going to come a time where you lose that peak and you never get it back. Branch Warren has had it. Jay Cutler has had it. Phil Heath's on the rise, of course. Kai Green, you can see, start to go backwards a little bit. I feel like he has peaked. He's been in the game a long time. You know, Flex Lewis still on the incline. Obviously hasn't peaked yet. You're going to see a point where these guys start to go backwards. And it's more of a non-acceptance thing with these guys, that they'll be like, well, I did something wrong. I got to change this. I got to change that. I got to try another trainer. I got to try a new training program. And they try all this shit, and it doesn't work because they have peaked. So for those of you out there who, you know, are steadily improving, you're still not peaking yet, but you're going to hit a point where you have to be honest with yourself about you're not getting any better and you're not going to get any better. And then you have peaked. And that realization kind of sucks as an athlete, but if the greats can't pull that off, either can you. And that's okay. I mean, when you step back and say Cutler and Ronnie, they all had one good year that they were their best and they couldn't maintain that peak afterwards, and they're the genetic elite, well, fuck, man, it's okay if I didn't have more than a year or two at my best. That's the way it goes. But at least if you had that peak, you had that peak. Some people will quit before they never even get that. And that is a huge feather in your cap later on when you look at the pictures and the videos of yourself and you say, man, I gave it everything for as long as I could and I perfectly peaked my body. And that's not something many people can do. biosctraining@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.biosctraining.com is the blog. The Peaking Bicep of Peace. Get that sleeve up there. Peaking Bicep of Peace, and we're out.
Extreme. Make plans to be at the 2014 Blue Ridge Fitness Festival, April 26, 2014. Mark the Machine Lowbliner brings the ANBF Natural Bodybuilding Show to Roanoke, Virginia. Extreme Living brings Jerry Ward of Bios3 Training. More information can be found at extremeliving.biz. We'll see you there.